epoch. Praise the Lord. We are in Epoch 4, which is 1200 to 930 BC. So we're moving ever closer, even though it seems slow, we're moving ever closer to the birth of Christ. So this is 1200 to 930 BC. And the books of this epoch have a lot to do with the forming of Israel as a nation. If you read this preliminary article about it, you would have read that Israel defeated these countries, but was, with the help of the Lord, but was barely hanging on. That's the word they used. They were barely hanging on. It says the conquest of Canaan under Joshua is pictured as a united effort by the Israelite people. Yet because of natural boundaries and local concerns, Israel became an increasingly fragmented people. If you remember, Joshua said to every one of the groups, here's your land, go to your land. So instead of a big city where they all were together, they all went to their areas, which they're talking about the natural geographic boundaries, the rivers and the mountains and things like that. For those who have been over there, and I have not, there's a lot of that available to them, and so it divided them, which was in theory good because they were trying to give them their own due, their own property that the Lord had promised. However, it didn't help in the coming together of a nation. It was, as is said here, an increasingly fragmented people. International power in the ancient world was at a low ebb. Still, Israel was barely surviving against this relatively insignificant people as the Moabites, the Midianites, and the Amalekites. The Israelite tribes were struggling to find a foothold in the new land. Israel's story makes a transition, however, from the loose-knit group of tribes to a highly organized monarchy. The tribes were governed by divinely selected judges, eventually became a kingdom ruled by a dynasty, also chosen under divine guidance. This story is told through a dramatic sweep of events that produced the most powerful empire in the ancient Middle East, in the golden age under the leadership of David and Solomon. But y'all are going to be somewhere.
We have been.
We have been.
Oh,
So
you're back. Oh.
On the road.
Went to Buc-ee's twice.
Oh, I saw that you've been there once. I was there 3 times yesterday.
You haven't.
No, I was there twice yesterday and one the other day.
You haven't been there.
So anyway, back to our Bible study. Although I know God would want us to pay attention to Buc-ee's because it's a divinely orchestrated thing.
I
I
mean,
would say.
when you're starving,
We took a picture of your idol.
I saw it.
Sent that along to you.
I saw it.
So you just wanted
I did. I saw it. Anyway, so then this article goes on to say the archaeological and the past, and it talks about Canaanite cities such as Beth and Beth Shemesh, and they had urban cultures. They had paved floors, and they had public drainage systems and fortified walls, sophisticated pottery, art, jewelry, and statues of gods are found in large numbers. Now, isn't that interesting? Statues of gods were found, but remember that both Moses and Joshua said, you shall have no other gods. That was one of the commandments, as we know. And they tried to get them to not have these little gods, these backup, I call them backup gods. They worshiped the Lord their God who delivered them from Egypt. They worshiped the Lord their God who brought them into the promised land. They still had to have a little backup God. You know, I've told you the story of seeing the lady in Santa Fe in the hospital, and I went to anoint her before surgery, and she had a crystal. What is that? What do you have that for? I knew her enough to say that. What is that? I knew what it was. It's a crystal. I said, it's a healing crystal. I said, do you think that healing crystal's going to do any good? And she said, well, it can't do any bad. Can't hurt. I said, give me that. I said, I'm going to pray for you and anoint you. And you're going to go into that surgery. And when you come out and you're better, I'll give you your crystal back. Oh, Father John. I said, give me that crystal.
Did she do that?
She gave it to me.
Well, it wouldn't let her take it in there anyway.
No, but I wanted her to let go of it.
Yeah.
And then I prayed for her and anointed her. But that's just kind of the way that is in that part of the world.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was in this part of the world.
Yeah.
So all these years later, people still have, if you go to people's houses in Santa Fe, you will see Indian gods on the walls and paintings of them, and all of that, Patty. All of those things. They still. I don't think they worship them. That's not what they do. But that's part of their culture.
That's backup.
Yeah, and it's culture. It's that they have them. So what was found when they dug all this up all these years later was all these gods. So they kept them, even though they told them to get rid of them. You remember, they told them to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And then they have a different picture of an Israelite settlement during this period. Towns appeared in the hill country for the first time, including such places as Shiloh, Mizpah, and Gilead. What is Mizpah? Told you last week. What does it stand for? When they would say as a code word Mizpah, what would it mean? Peace between you and me.
Oh,
Yes.
And they used it in World War II
oh yeah.
as a password. Mizpah. Peace between you and me. So, it's interesting. So this was a city. The houses were built of stones stacked together with no attempt to shape the stones to fit and no mortar to hold them together. Art and pottery were crude and no signs of trade. The picture fits with that book of Judges. That in the book of Judges, the Israelites were poor, oppressed, and threatened by the superior cultures of their new neighbors. They were barely clinging to existence. So the Lord gave them the ability to defeat them in war, these neighbors. He gave them the ability to defeat them in war. But that doesn't mean that these people weren't advanced above the Israelites. They had already had cities. They already had these areas. And so they were far advanced of the Israelites, who were basically a what? An agricultural economy. I've talked about that many times. Donate sheep, donate lambs, donate oxen to the altar. That's what they had to give. These people had moved past that. However, they did it without God. So it says the transition from the book of Judges to Kings can be seen in archaeology. Gibeah, Saul's fortress, had been excavated, revealing a two-story building well built with at least one watchtower. A high-quality pottery was found there, and most important, an iron plow point. Okay, who is Saul? What do we know about Saul? Why is Saul important? King Saul. Why?
David's
Tried to kill David.
Right.
He chased David down, tried to kill him, because he was worried, jealous. So they at one time were friends, and then he started chasing David, and David had to go into hiding.
In caves.
And that's right. And so this is them saying they found it. However, it says Israel was beginning to use iron, yet it was David who provided a large amount of iron for the construction of a temple. All the iron fastenings that David stored up made the building of Solomon's temple possible. Iron nails held longer and tighter than those of bronze. When David began various building projects in Jerusalem, about, very little had been uncovered in the archaeologists. Oh, somebody said that for me.
Archaeologists.
Thank you so much. Excavations in Jerusalem do show an ingenious water system to which David's soldiers may have climbed to capture the city. It was known as Jebus, which was the precursor to Jerusalem. Jebus. So, I'm telling you, why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this to see that David's son Solomon, if we'll go through all of this, was the first biggest builder for Israel, the builder of temples. You've heard a lot about Solomon's temple, and when we get to that, we'll read it in detail. Now, why is Solomon's temple important? You know the answer. No,
It was
What?
dedicated to Yahweh for one thing.
yes, that's right. But why has it lasted? Why has the story of King Solomon's temple? Let me ask you a different way. Why has the story of King Solomon's temple lasted this long? Besides being in the Bible, there's another reason. Masons.
It was
The
Oh,
Masons.
no.
So the Masons Lodge is a replica in small detail. Most of them are. A lot of them are. They say they are. Let me just keep saying this. Of King Solomon's temple. They will refer to it in the Masonic Lodge as King Solomon's temple, and they will talk about, because Masons have three groups. They have entered apprentice Masons, fellowcraft Masons, and master Masons, which are the same thing that the people who worked and built King Solomon's temple were. This is where a group started. It's very still going today. What are they called? Not Masons. What are they called?
Francis.
What?
Francis.
St. Francis.
Yes, but there's one more thing. So we don't have it a lot down here, but the unions,
Oh,
the builders unions, all that. That's more up in the Northeast than down here as much. But the unions, and when you join a union as whether it's a electrician's union or a builder's union or whatever it is, you start as an entered apprentice, and you go to fellowcraft, and you go to master mason, and that's how you're paid, and that's how your experience is. And that was right out of the structure that King Solomon will get to it eventually. I'm just giving you a preview.
wow.
That's what came out of King Solomon's temple. In the Masonic Lodge, I'm not telling any secrets I don't think anybody can find online. When you come in and join the Masonic Lodge, you are an entered apprentice Mason. And then you do certain things, and you learn certain things, and you're able to say certain things, and then you become a fellowcraft Mason. And then finally, when you do more things and memorize more things and talk about more and all these things, you are raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason that comes straight out of King Solomon's temple. Because when they became a Master Mason, they had a ceremony for it because it was an important thing.
Wow.
So the Masonic Lodge has taken that whole structure, and that's what they built the Masonic Lodge on
To this day.
to this day.
That is
Why-
amazing.
Why are so many people against Mason?
Because they don't know anything about it.
Okay.
That's exactly why. That's a short answer, but it's a secret society. Well, it's not very secret. I've just told you. I mean, they have certain grips and handshakes and things, but it's not very secret. You can go online and find out almost anything you want to know. But the church back in the during the wars, what am I want to say? The Crusades, it was a big deal. So the Crusades started a part of Masonry, and so there's Masons. And then when you get through with Masons, if you want to, you can become a Scottish Rite Mason, or you could become a York Rite Mason. York Rite is built, in my house, you will see a sword on the wall. That was my York Rite sword that was handed down to me by other people. You are a York Rite Mason. What is the difference between York Rite and Scottish Rite Masons? One thing mainly. You can all get me in trouble. No, you're not going to get me in trouble. I don't care.
I have no idea.
Well, I'll tell you. Because I was a member of all of them. I
Yeah.
was president of my Scottish Rite class. The difference is that the York Rite was built on the Christian Crusades, and they do not allow Jews as members. The Scottish Rite Masons allow Jews to be members. That's the difference.
Wow.
I mean, that's not the only difference, but
Right.
that's the difference. So York Rite Masons have, when they do their ceremonies and things. They have the chapeau and it looks like the Christian Crusades.
Right.
Yeah.
That's their. Whereas the Scottish Rite Masons put on all of these degrees that tell them there's 32 degrees, and so there's the Master Mason is the third degree, so 4 through 32 is a Scottish Rite Mason, and you go and you spend a day or two at the temple, and they put on these tableaus, they call them, and they act out these degrees.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a big
It's
deal.
complicated.
It's very complicated. Yes, sir.
My great-grandfather was Master Mason.
Yes.
He's buried in the National Cemetery in Mexico City for the military.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
A lot of people who are Master Masons are buried with their
Apron.
apron.
What apron?
My
Not a-
brother-in-law was.
I'm not
It's
very,
a
I'm not
lambs-
myself today. I've
It's a
been sick.
lambskin apron.
Yeah, lambskin. Yeah, I'll bring mine sometime and show it to you.
That's interesting.
My
This
brother-in-law
is a whole new world.
was buried with it.
You've never been to a Masonic graveside?
No, sir.
Oh,
No, sir.
well, so all of Masonry is not, it's only written down one place. And that's at the Scottish Rite Temple in Washington, D.C. And it's in a sealed thing and it goes down, it's hidden. Everything is mouth to ear, and they teach you. So when I became an entered apprentice, I sat down with a guy who I thought was a little nutty, and we sat in a room, and he would say, so it would be, whence come you as an entered apprentice Mason? And then he'd give you the answer. I come from the Holy Saints John of Jerusalem. What come you here to do? I come to subdue my passions and improve myself in masonry. Then you are a Mason, I presume. I'm so taken and accepted by. I haven't done it in years, but I mean, that's the first
Okay,
question.
what made you, did somebody invite you?
You can't be invited, but you can ask to be a member. And my first boss in Wichita Falls, is it all right for me to talk about places I used to be?
Yes.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
complain about it. You
Yeah,
know.
go ahead.
No, we won't tell.
Okay, thank you.
I told you about a guy from Paducah, so it's.
Yeah. Well, but you don't have people complaining about my sermons. Mr. Hampton was a 33rd degree Mason, which you cannot. You have to. It's given. It's not. It's bestowed. It's not. You can't earn it.
Okay.
And well, sort of you do. But anyway, it's based on how many people you bring into Masonry. How many you bring into the Scottish Rite is what it is. But anyway, it's a 33rd degree Mason. There's a certain rank. You can tell them a mile away.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sorry. What was your question? I'm sorry.
What got you,
Oh, so he was a Mason. His son was a Mason.
just everybody needed to be a,
Yeah. Well, and back in those days, in
Yeah.
1973, there's all men in the funeral business. There were no women except secretaries. And so not everybody there was, but if you wanted to, you remember the lodge. Back in those days, the lodges were big. They had a lot of people in them. That's what, in the 50s, that's most of these big temples that you see, Scottish Rite and York Rite, and York Rite's in the Scottish Rite, but York Rite, Scottish Rite, and the Masonic temples, gosh, they were built in the 40s and 50s when it was a big deal when people came back from World War II.
I know nothing about any of this. I've heard the
Well, the temples
words,
you
but
can
I've
see the
never-
temples. I mean, they're everywhere.
Isn't that crazy?
My sister's
Um,
significant other is a Grand Poobah.
So-
No, I've never known
Well, I
anybody.
heard her grandson got given in school some award by the Masonic Temple.
well, we do that. That's an outreach
At
thing.
Ingram.
That's an outreach thing. Yeah, sure. But nonetheless, what I'm trying to, let's go back to this. They took the building of King Solomon's temple, the main temple, and used that, and all the people. That's what they patterned masonry after. In what country? England.
So they set up this organization to build these temples,
So there's
this
there's
union type
They
thing.
didn't build them. No, that's not what happened. What they have, let me see if I can remember the words. So they have, there's two words. There's the actual Masons that are members of the Hammer. Oh, and then there's speculative Masons. Those are the people that are members of lodge that just go by the names and use the titles and things, but they don't build anything. They don't build these. They have people build them. Yes, sir.
Enid,
Offered
Oklahoma
respectfully.
has a big
Who does?
temple. Enid,
Oh,
Oklahoma.
McAllister
Have
is.
you ever been in it?
No, but I've been to.
I've
Oh
been in
yeah, that's the Grand Lodge.
Yeah,
I've been in many times, and then
I've been in it too. And
it's beautiful.
they had us way up in a balcony just to demonstrate.
The
They
sound.
hit a key on the piano and you could hear the
Oh, you're
beautiful.
They spent millions
But
of
it
dollars.
wasn't used as a mason, it was part of the city now.
Yeah, because there aren't enough masons anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, there are very few. I mean, there's just not. You know, because well, here's what happened. Masons were mostly at night. The lodge people would go to the lodge, and then when at some point women started working outside the home,
Yeah.
more and more and more. Not after World War II, but even farther than that. They started working out of the home. So back in the days of Father Knows Best, where he'd come and he'd put on his coat and have dinner and go to lodge. The women now say, no, you're not going to do that. I've been here with these kids all day, or I
I'm
work
going.
too.
I'm going.
I'm going. And so they ruined it for everybody like they usually do. Women always ruin
Bingo.
it. And
Well,
So-
women have their Eastern
He says that's
Star.
they had Eastern Star. I was a member of the Eastern Star because they have to have 3 Master Masons to hold an Eastern Star meeting. So I was a member of the Eastern Star and the White Shrine of Jerusalem. I was, I did all of it. And I drove kids to the hospital from Muskogee, Oklahoma. We went to the shrine we had bus vans that we would take kids to. The first ever shrine hospital was in right across the border into I think Arkansas, where it was. And we would take those kids and they'd go see the doctors, and we'd spend the night and we'd bring them back the next day and take them by their houses, on the way. I did thousands and thousands and thousands of miles driving those kids.
All right.
Y'all
So
don't know anything about me, do you?
On
No.
51st Street in Tulsa.
Yeah, I've been to
Was the Masonic Lodge out there. But it was also an old folks home, which when in junior high, our drama class went out there and did a play at the Masonic.
for the people.
Yeah, for the people. And that's my total exposure.
I was counting on being able to go to one of those, but now they don't have them anymore much. But I've been to the
There's one
Scottish Rite
outside
Temple.
Dayton, Ohio.
Huh?
There's one outside Dayton,
Oh, yeah.
Ohio.
There's one in my home.
Dallas, Texas, Scottish Rite, and my Scottish Rite was in McAllister, big place, and then Tulsa had one, of course.
My hometown is still a big thing. I mean, they've
So,
still got Eastern
that's-
Star, Job's Daughters.
that's what I was going
Um,
to ask. Are
mhm.
some of these facilities just gone?
No,
Or
they're gone.
still
They
going.
use them for other things, or they rent them out. I mean, even this shrine temple in where did I go? Where's it? San Antonio. If you drive by it, it'll have a sign, electric sign. It'll say this Sunday gun show, or this Sunday,
Oh,
this
I see.
Saturday, whatever. They rent them out
Okay.
to supplement their, because they just don't have as many people as they used to have. I was in there. I was in the Masonic Lodge in Muskogee. It was a huge place, and I was there 3 years. And on the 3rd year, I was made worshipful master. I was elected worshipful master. It should have taken me 5 or 6 years to go through the chairs, but everybody had already done it. So I learned the words,
Okay.
and
So
so
you got it.
I got the job.
My hometown still has an active DeMolay.
1993.
Oh, I've heard that name.
DeMolay, that's
Yes.
for boys.
That's the
Job's Daughters
boys.
is for girls.
That's right. That's all that.
And
It
that's
used to be
still
very
active.
big.
But that's still active in my
It is.
hometown.
It used to be very big, and in some towns it's all still big, but
Yeah.
in some bigger towns it's just hard. It's life changes. Life changes.
Lot going
So,
on.
But
But they-
the shrine still has the shrine hospitals.
Yes.
I think
Right.
they have 30 of them almost.
And they're still functioning.
Oh, they're big deals.
Yeah.
So there's
They don't charge anybody.
Shriners now.
What?
There's Shriners now.
Oh yeah, shrine hospitals are
Yeah,
all over the United States.
Masons are.
They have one of the
They
best.
have to be a Mason to be a Shriner.
Yeah.
They have
But
one of
the
best
people don't go
burn
to lodge
centers in
much anymore
America.
like they used to. I'll give you an example of how pitiful it is. So Johnny Grimes is a life member of the Masons. His father was, and one other person. You pay a certain amount, you get to be a life member.
Right.
You don't have to go anymore. You're just a life member. But I thought it would be nice for me to go to the Masonic Lodge here. Now, I will tell you that a lot of the English bishops and people do not like you to be. When they said, don't say anything about that, but I don't really care. So they have to prove to me why I can't go, and they're not members, so they don't know anything about it. However, I went out to the Masonic Lodge here, and I walked in and introduced myself, and I had my paperwork, and I said, I'd like to affiliate with your lodge. And they said, well, where were you a member? And I said, Muskogee, Oklahoma. They said, well, we'll have to write to the Grand Lodge of Muskogee, which is in Enid. You'll have to write to the Grand Lodge. And then once they get it, then we'll have to write to our Grand Lodge, and then we can. Now, this is a group that has, 10 people or whatever. I mean, that are active. You'd think they would say, yes, my friend, come in.
Yes, they didn't make it easy.
They still have not. And that's been months ago.
Well, some are
They've never-
squared away and some aren't.
I'm sorry, what?
I say some are squared away and some aren't.
Yes, that's right.
Wow.
So anyway, and they talk about in the Masonic Lodge and the Master Mason ceremony, the Lion of the Tribe of Judah. They talk about all those things. It's all biblical. If you read about it, it's all biblical. It's
Wow.
the Scottish rite is as well. The York rite is about the Crusades. More about that. Anyway, I didn't mean to go on and on about that, but
Thank you for sharing
yeah, sure. Next time you're at my house, I'll show you.
the sword.
I'll show you why the whole thing.
It's on the wall.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what it was for.
Okay, so I talked about King Solomon's temple, and that's why it sort of lives today in that, because people talk about it just like we did. It talks about Solomon was a trader in chariots and horses, and he would buy chariots in Egypt and sell them farther north, and he became very wealthy. He did other things. He became very wealthy, and he had lots of different things. And excavations later have uncovered remains of the metal industry, apparently worked by the slaves. Solomon controlled the mines of the Sinai and had a monopoly on the metal industry of his day. It was through these mines, most likely, the great bronze doors and other metal trappings of the temple came. He was a big guy. Solomon's most significant building was the temple and royal palace. The plans of Solomon's temple, as described in the Bible, is similar to the plans of other temples in Canaan and Phoenicia. In fact, a temple dedicated to Yahweh has been excavated near the city of Aaron in the Negev. It was part of the royal fortress from the time of Solomon and differs from the Jerusalem temple mainly in having a broad room rather than a long holy place. The 20-year temple palace enterprise was impressive testimony that Israel had made the transition from tribes to a great nation. So, what they're saying here, which I guess you can agree with or not, is that the fact that they were able to build and have commerce made them a great nation, as opposed to maybe other things. So let's ask this. If you believe that, that's great. But would a great nation be someone who fell down on his knees and worshiped God? And would God have provided for them had they done that, instead of the building of iron and building of temples and gates? Now, building of temples was for God, of course, but you know what I'm saying here. Which was the cart before the horse here? What made them a great nation was commerce. I'm not sure that that's what Jesus would have said. That your industry is what makes you a great nation. I would think that we're trying to say to people right now in every service we have and in everything we do, that this nation is not great anymore because it doesn't fall down on its knees before God.
Amen.
That's just a saying. But wouldn't that be the case, that we have lost our ability to worship God, and therefore all the big things that we've built and all the things that we've done don't matter because what's the old saying? You can't take them with you.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't build and have things. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I am saying that, maybe we should
Reverse the order.
reverse the order. Maybe we should be more subservient to God and let God provide for us. Now, why don't we do that? That's a good question. Why don't we do that, Brian? You know the answer to this. Why don't we are we subservient to God and take matters into our own hands instead?
It's a very deep philosophical question because we are human and many people put goods and display, ostentatious and otherwise, ahead of what the spiritual health should be.
That's an excellent answer, Brian. Let me give you one more. And that is excellent. Let's just try this. It's basically what you're saying, I think, in a different way.
It's not a lack of faith, it's a misplaced faith.
Well, I think it's a lack of faith. So it goes back to the people who have the crystal in their hand.
Yeah.
It's I can't rely on God to provide. Therefore, I am going to provide for myself. And because I'm human, because I'm human. And I'm not saying that we're supposed to just sit around in a little hut and, pray to God to send a deer in the door to feed us. That's not it. But I think we lose track of what's important.
And we forget that we are stewards of God.
That's an excellent answer again, Brian. So you all know Stephanie, and she has 35 acres in Lampasas and a 4,000 square foot house up there. And she says to me all the time, my job is to continue to be a steward of what God has given me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's pretty powerful. It's just what you said, Brian. I'm not sure we all think that way. I'm not sure anybody hardly thinks that way anymore. I'm not sure I would have thought that way unless I heard it that way. But is everything we get something that we should be stewards of for God?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Do we treat it that way? No. Rarely.
No.
If that's, you're given the benefit of the doubt there. Rarely. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting that they put a premium on building. Now, they were building temples. I get that. But let's go to a deeper philosophical question that, as Brian puts it, and that is the bigger, more grand church, the big cathedrals, the more whatever, are they necessarily more no, are they necessarily more godly, or are they necessarily than, let's say, our little church?
Nope.
No. Sometimes what happens? Sometimes we get caught up in the building of the grand thing, and we forget what we're supposed to do first. This is the way I found it. This is just for what it's worth. Many years ago, when we were younger, Tom, I said we.
Good.
Churches had one service, right?
Yes.
You went to church, and there was
10
one
o'clock.
service.
10 o'clock.
Whatever it was, you went to one service. Or I was supposed to talk about places in my past. I forgot that. So I'm going to push that down until
Okay.
they vomit on it.
Okay.
So then what happened? They started having a second service. This was before contemporary.
8 o'clock.
They had a second service.
Yes, the 8 o'clock.
And then Sometimes there was a third service, which was the night before. This was mostly Catholic.
Mhm.
Now, when this all started, why was this 8 o'clock service done?
So people could have time to themselves.
Why do you think
Watch
it-
the football game.
Yes,
You are exactly right.
yes.
We would run home from the 10 o'clock service to make it.
But then they had it 8 o'clock, so you could come
No.
And then go to breakfast and then still make the football game.
and then go watch the football
You are-
game and whatever go to the lake or go watch. Or when
Golf.
school
Golf.
started doing
No,
t-ball and all that stuff on Sundays.
Yeah, golf.
When they broke golf, when the schools broke the blue law, when the blue law was broken, they started having kids games. You all know more about them than I do, but t-ball and soccer and whatever they play. But the churches did this. Now, I have a phrase for that. This is, so let me back up. If you have a full service here, it's absolutely full,
10 o'clock.
you should have a second service, shouldn't you?
Right.
To accommodate the people to worship God.
Yes.
Fair enough. But that's not what happened. This happened because this was a what?
Truncated service.
Matter of convenience.
You got it. You got it. A matter of convenience. And that offends me.
Yeah.
If we filled up this church every Sunday for X number of times, we'd add a service.
Don't.
But we don't, so we won't. But my point is, a lot of these places were built as they said as magnificent, things to God. The spires reach skyward into heaven to God. You've heard all that stuff. And it's okay, but where's their first place?
Not here.
Where's their first place?
Not here.
Gotta have priorities.
Yeah, you gotta have priorities. So here we go back to Solomon, who built these great temples. But it says in here he owned the iron, and he owned this, and he owned that, and he did this, he did that. And so it talks about that. And so
He did it to build himself up, I think.
he could have. I don't know. I don't know because we weren't there.
Yeah.
But I would say that it was some of both. I would
Yeah.
think that they were trying to build temples for people. So here's the thing. What do we remember about churches when we were young? It's not this way anymore. Because we're a destination church. But what do we remember about churches when we were young? It's where it was the center of our lives,
Yeah.
wasn't it? It was the center of our lives. You used to remember there was a cemetery by it.
Mm-hmm.
It was the center of our lives. We came to church all the time.
Not anymore.
Not so much. Some do, but not so much. Those mega churches that have 65 programs and all that, they do have people there, but not so much. So let me skip over here to the biblical literature. Biblical books which relate to Israel's transition to the kingdom include Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st Chronicles, and parts of 1st Kings and 2nd Chronicles. These books are a special kind of history. They not only give data about the past, but they try to explain what the data meant and how God was active in the history of the people. Judges is a collection of narratives about tribal heroes and heroines in the period between the death of Joshua and the time of Samuel. Ruth is about a foreign woman through whom God works to bring forth King David. And then 1st and 2nd Samuel reports the end of the judges and the rise of the monarchy in Israel. They include the lives of Samuel, Saul, and David. So I can't wait till we get to Ruth. Now, most of you all know the story of Ruth, but I think we're going to look at it in a more deep way. And then it goes on to say, the histories of Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles report the golden age of monarchy under David and Solomon. Many of Israel's writings were associated with these great kings. Traditionally, more of the Psalms were described to David than to any other person. The glory years of Solomon are reflected in the love songs and the Song of Songs and the collections of sayings with the good life in Proverbs and in the ultimate questions of life and death that is covered in Ecclesiastes. So it's interesting, isn't it, that this now tells us that what's important in these men's lives, and Bruce, what's important is what we're about to learn by reading the stories in the Bible, not by what they did of building, not by what they did. Did you hear what it said? The Psalms, the glory years of Solomon reflected the love songs, the Song of Songs, the collection of sayings, and the good life in Proverbs, and the ultimate questions of life and death covered in Ecclesiastes. Nothing about building a temple. This is what's important. So, while we will hear about building of the temple, I want you to put that aside some to focus on the fact of what was left for us to understand. And it is not the building of the temple. It is not those things. It is their writings that they did that we're going to look at in depth. Sounds good?
Yep.
Interesting. Well, I spent too much time on the Masons today, but
Thank
that's
you
all
for
right.
the education.
Yeah. A lot of people like Brian grew up with the Masonic temples being big and popular, and you probably did too, but Brian did, and you did in your hometown, and so it's just it was a different time in life. The 50s were the culmination of the Masonic life in America.
One of the important things that's frequently overlooked is the interaction that's in the trust that develops between individuals because they know the ethical base that they're coming from.
Yeah.
And today, that's lost in
Yes.
many cases.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it just expertly. I couldn't have said it better if I'd have tried. That's excellent. That's right. I mean, there was a way they promised each other certain things. They did things. They swore to certain things. And they by and large kept those promises. They just all gotten older and died.